Umaga was a larger-than-life character, a monster that made an impact on many WWE fans. It's an honor to present to you on the Wrestling Paradise, the second episode of our new series where you will learn the real-life story of the man behind the Samoan Bulldozer, and it may very well surprise you. In the previous episode, which you should absolutely watch, we saw how the one who came from the legendary Anoa'i family ended up becoming a wrestler to provide for his wife and their 4 children, and that in the summer of 2002, he made an impactful WWE debut on the main roster in the 3-minute warning team, but got fired later because of an incident in a bar. In this new episode, you will learn, among other things, what Vince McMahon said during a meeting before WrestleMania 22 that would lead to the creation of the Umaga character. A very surprising idea that the officials had for him at some point, and how he got choked out for real by John Cena during an iconic match. But also, how an incident with a fan in Mexico almost cost him his spot in the main attraction of the second best-selling pay-per-view in WWE history. The very surprising reason why the legend Shawn Michaels was angry at him when they did a show in Iraq, and even the secrets behind the ending of his massive push. And you will never guess which famous personality had one of the most painful moments of his life when he was in the ring with him. You are on the Wrestling Paradise, the tragical destiny of the Samoan Bulldozer, Umaga, Episode 2. Let's go! With the goal in mind of eventually return to the WWE, we will see Umaga gain experience on the independent circuit. For several years, he wrestled, among other promotions, at World Extreme Wrestling, his uncle's Athas Federation, in July and October 2003, at Major League Wrestling in the summer of 2003, where he formed the Samoan Island Tribe with Samu and Mana, and even in Europe in October 2005 at New Wrestling Entertainment, an Italian promotion. The major difference with WWE and all of these adventures in the indies is that now, and for the first time in his career, he is wrestling without his cousin Matt, without Rosie, his partner for years, who has been kept by Vince McMahon's company, where he is going to form a new team which is a bit different, with the Hurricane, and even win the tag team title in May 2005. We can say that from now on, without his cousin who was 3 years older than him and who has always been by his side since he started pro wrestling, Umaga had to stand on his own feet. On the independent circuit, it is above all 2 experiences in particular that stand out from the others. The first one will be at TNA from September 2003 until the end of November. Then another time for a single match in August 2004. There, under the name of ECMO this time, he will join forces with Sony Siaki, and they will have matches in particular against the 3 Live Crew team, in which there is the one who will become R-Truth in the WWE, and against the Gathering, a team with the one and only CM Punk. What we can notice about his time at TNA is a new black and shiny outfit that he often puts on. A move that he starts to do and which will become the Samoan Wrecking Ball that I love, in which he puts the opponent on the mat in a corner of the ring and rushes at him. One time he even did a kip-up, which is remarkable for his size. The second and much longer experience will be at All Japan Pro Wrestling from November 2003 to December 2005. 2 full years in Japan. There he will always be in tag team matches. First with Just Incredible, then in the Roughly Obsess and Destroy faction. With D'Lo Brown, Buchanan, then Taiyo Kia. And it is with the latter that he will have real successes at AGPW. In December 2004, they won the Real World Tag League Tournament. And then in January 2005, they will win the Federation Team title. And become, during those years, the top gay genes of the company, namely non-Japanese wrestlers. They will have a real reign for almost a year, and when we watch Umaga's matches in Japan, what we notice is that he had much more opportunities to shine than before, since he participated in 153 matches in a little over 2 years. There have regularly been matches that lasted between 15 and 25 minutes, especially in 2005, when in WWE he almost never had matches that lasted more than 10 minutes. However, there is no noticeable change in terms of look and physique, even if by no longer being with Rosie, who was a bit bigger and imposing than him. Let's say that Umaga's impressive side is even more highlighted. The bottom line of all of these non-WWE experiences is that he was able to go abroad, explore the world of pro wrestling, do a lot of in-ring stuff, knowing that all of this was happening when he was between 30 and 32 years old. Thanks to that, he was able to improve, and in December 2005, he will be rewarded. Vince McMahon's federation was impressed enough to give him a second chance, and he had a new contract with them in December 2005. Of course, it's great that he's back in WWE and that his efforts have paid off, but the big question is, what are they going to do with him now? Apparently, at some point, the officials had an idea to create a heel faction, which would have been called Black Friday Management, and which would have been led by the veteran Gary Hart, and of which Umaga would have been the star, in a rather mafia gimmick. WWE also wanted to integrate an Asian female based on the character of the schoolgirl Gogo Yubari in the movie Kill Bill, but in the end this idea was abandoned. They will also try to do the 3-minute warning again, since his cousin was still in the company. They will even have a dark match on Heat on January 9th, 2006 against Trent Acid and Bison Bravado. But it's also going to be cancelled. As told by the man who will become very important for the Samoan in the following months, Armando Estrada, when Umaga came back, the idea was to do the 3-minute warning again, and that Estrada became their manager. But Vince McMahon first wanted Rosie to go to their Ohio Valley Wrestling Training Center to work on his fitness and lose weight. But in the end, it didn't happen. Rosie didn't stay in the WWE. And one day, Michael Hayes, one of the officials, is going to call Armando Estrada and tell him that with Umaga, they will start right after WrestleMania 22 in April 2006. And that they are going to be tremendous, so they have to be ready. But what did the company have planned for them? Kurt Bauer, who was a WWE writer at that time, says, "We're getting ready to go to Chicago for WrestleMania 22. We had our last meeting going into there with Vince. He goes, we gotta get some new heels for Cena. We gotta keep feeding this guy. We need monsters." So AK and I are on the phone, and at the hotel we just came up with Umaga. And it was a callback, a throwback to his uncles doing the White Samoans gimmick, but with a modern twist with the grill piece. I pitched him the face paint. Originally, I wanted it to be a temp tattoo. 72 hours later, he debuted on Raw. That's how fast he went from sitting out. Concept, sign off, now he's making a big impact. So he will officially become Umaga, a new character with a tribal side, just like his ancestors. As Jim Ross tells us, drawings were made to create his character. They gave him a real good repackaging and imagined an original and unique look, and worthy of the spotlight that he was about to have on his own for the first time in his career. He was going to be a monster heel, as they call them, just like Yokozuna was before him, for example. And the whole idea was that he represented a new dangerous opponent for John Cena, the WWE champion at that moment, which will have its importance later. Apparently, in meetings they had at that time, Umaga proved to the officials that he was ready mentally, more mature, which was the only problem for WWE initially, since they always saw potential in him physically. He just had to manage the whole mental side of this job, but Umaga's charisma and star power were never questioned. By the way, one day, Jim Ross told Vince McMahon about Umaga. "Your dad would love this guy, because he would have been a great opponent for Bruno Sammartino. He's one of those monster heels Bruno could have got multiple main events out of in Madison Square Garden." Anyway, it is now April 2006, and after having been in tag teams for years, especially with his cousin, under the names of ECMO, Armageddon, or Jamal, Umaga was ready to finally hit the main roster with a new character whose impact was going to be memorable: the Samoan Bulldozer. It is April 3rd, 2006, just after WrestleMania 22. Ric Flair is in the ring with Armando Estrada, and the Cuban businessman has someone to introduce to the Nature Boy. And at that moment, we witness the first official appearance of a new character: Umaga. For the record, it's a word that designates the last and most painful stage of the process of getting a tattoo in Samoan. It means the end, and I think it's perfect for a wild beast who comes to destroy everyone. It really sounds like a great name for some kind of final boss. For this first appearance, there are several things we can notice. He doesn't have dreadlocks on his hair yet. He has a piercing in his nose. He doesn't have a bandage on his thumb yet. But on the other hand, we already feel a wild and tribal side, thanks to a theme song with drums and this incredible face paint. Personally, I don't like this version of him as much as the one that will remain the most famous one of Umaga. But let's not forget that the creation of this character and its debut were decided very quickly in the previous days. We can say that they were still searching for the best look at that time. However, he still destroyed Ric Flair, with in particular the move that I love and which will become one of his signatures: the Samoan Wrecking Ball, where he rushes at the opponent sitting in the corner of the ring and blows his head off. He also didn't use the famous Samoan Spike yet, his destructive finisher with his thumb, which he will start doing in the following weeks. An awesome element that we already notice is that he is a wild beast that only obeys his master, Armando Estrada. And more generally, he will not speak English, which gives him even more an animal side with his own language, which we cannot control. The following weeks, adjustments will be made while Umaga continues to kill his opponents. In his first televised match, a week after attacking Ric Flair, he will smash Chris Guy, who is better known as Colt Cabana, CM Punk's former friend. And at that moment, he has dreadlocks and some kind of Samoan spike, which looked more like a submission at that time. But it will definitely become the impactful and brutal Samoan spike starting from the following matches, with this bandage that gives even more aura to this move, especially when he will destroy Ric Flair at Backlash in just over 3 minutes. Can you only imagine how incredible these beginnings are? To get multiple quick victories and to absolutely destroy a legend like Ric Flair in such a short time for his first pay-per-view match. That's impressive. I love it, and that's how you give a superstar maximum credibility. In addition, this Umaga character was part of a cultural tradition of Samoan fighters, since in the 70s, the High Chief Peter Maivia was the first Samoan in the WWE, also wrestled barefoot, and was one of the first to have tattoos at the time. Throughout this period, we can also note that during this streak of invincibility, on June 26, 2006, he faced Kamala in what would be the last WWE appearance of this character, and who was, in a way, the monster heel prototype in the 80s and 90s, and clearly a source of inspiration. We can say that there was a passing of the torch between the two monsters on that day. And for the record, Kamala even was in a tag team with Sika, Umaga's uncle. I must also say that I love the fact that he screams in Samoan, that he is barefoot. It feels like seeing a warrior coming straight out of the jungle to go to battle. Another quality that I find incredible for a guy of his size is his agility and his speed. Jim Ross, the greatest commentator of all time, also said about him: he had amazing athleticism for a guy that big. He was a super heavyweight that had light heavyweight feet. We can say that he really has the total package. the look, the attitude, the in-ring abilities, and that must have convinced the officials even more to give him a massive push. And that is what will happen, since on the July 17th edition of Monday Night Raw, he will manage to beat the poster boy of the company, John Cena, by pinning him after the Samoan spike. So, of course, in this match, Edge was the champion at that moment, interfered, but it's still tremendous to win against the top guy of the WWE, in my opinion. Even in his private life, things were going better for Umaga. While for years he had been fighting to provide for his family, as we saw previously, he was able to move to Houston, Texas in 2006, where he bought a house for his family, with the help of his friend Shelton Benjamin. He was able to make the daily life of his loved ones better, especially since they lived in Florida just before, a state that had been impacted by the Hurricane Katrina in August 2005, which was also one of the reasons why Umaga wanted to move his family. He also wanted his sons to play football, and they would have much more opportunities in Houston for that. He really wanted to improve his children's lives, and it's awesome that he was able to do it thanks to his dominant run in the WWE at the time, and thanks to years of hard work. For the record, for the birthday of his youngest son, Zilla, at the time, Umaga gave him a dog who was called Oos. It's a period when, every time he came home for a few days, Umaga was very close with Zilla, and they were together all the time. His son says that he saw Umaga as a god, someone who was invincible, a real example for him. In the ring, this whole run as the Samoan Bulldozer will offer us some memorable moments. So make sure to stay until the end of this episode to dive even more in the career of one of the most powerful monster heels in WWE history. In the ring, he will continue his terrifying domination by getting two new, very significant victories. On July 31st, he beats Shawn Michaels, and on August 7th, he beats Triple H, each time with a Samoan spike, a move that also has the advantage of being possibly used on anyone. Do you realize the credibility that he has at that moment with all these prestigious victories since April? What is also crazy is that, as far as the two members of D-Generation X are concerned, Umaga almost had problems with them at the end of 2007, when they did the Tribute to the Troops show in Iraq. Apparently, Shawn Michaels was upset that the Samoan had tights of the same color as Triple H, and thought it was a disrespectful act. But it was Randy Orton, the WWE champion at that time, who was the only person to defend Umaga against HBK, the sign of a true friendship between the two men. And by the way, Orton paid tribute to Umaga in a tweet in November 2022. For him, he was like a brother, and he also shared a picture once where we saw Umaga wearing Randy Orton's trunks. The Viper says about the Samoan Bulldozer that he was a true friend, one of the absolute funniest guys backstage. But to go back to 2006, after all these amazing victories, Umaga will have a short rivalry with Kane, whom he will face at the Unforgiven pay-per-view, and also on Raw on October 9th, a match that the Samoan will win, which will force Kane to leave the Red brand. About this period, Armando Estrada says, "If I had to pick one that people saw, I would say go watch the Unforgiven pay-per-view in September of 2006. It was Umaga versus Kane. It was their first televised meeting. I cut a lengthy promo, which I got heat for afterwards. The audience was 100% with us as far as all the catchphrases, and I saw fans in the audience. This is what really told me I made it. I saw fans in that crowd that had written out my entire catchphrase word for word on all of these signs and had them in the audience." We can also remember the October 16 Raw in which Umaga taunted two members of the Jackass show, in particular Steve-O, much more violently than expected, and for a very simple reason. In fact, Steve-O had started laughing after being victimized by Umaga, while the Samoan told him to stay down and to sell his moves. But since he wasn't doing it, Umaga decided to go hit him for real, so that he could finally do a good selling job. Later, backstage, Armando Estrada and Umaga will thank Steve-O for having worked with them. And the latter told them, "When are we up, guys?" Which shows how much he was completely out. Steve-O has admitted since that this was among the most painful moments of his life. The culmination of all this impressive momentum for months, of this new character with maximum credibility, is the rivalry that he will have with John Cena, the WWE Champion, at the beginning of 2007. Let's not forget that, at first, the creation of Umaga came from the fact that in April 2006, Vince McMahon, the WWE boss, wanted new monsters to feed Cena. And at that moment, we finally arrived at what was the mission of the Samoan Bulldozer initially, to represent a great threat to Mr. You Can See Me. And, quite frankly, it will both lead to one of the best matches of Umaga's career in my eyes, but also to booking decisions that I really didn't like. While the Samoan Bulldozer is in an unbeaten streak that has lasted for 9 months, he will face John Cena for the title at the New Year's Revolution pay-per-view on January 7th, 2007. And there, an event will happen that personally disappoints me a lot. Cena will be the first to beat Umaga, and not even in a dominant fashion. While he suffered a lot during this match, he will steal the victory with a roll-up. I think it was a very bad decision. Once again, Cena broke the momentum of a superstar whose aura was based on this invincibility. So, of course, Umaga had won against him in the summer of 2006, but it still makes me sick to my stomach, because Cena should have struggled a lot more instead of already winning their first real serious match on pay-per-view. In addition, with the roll-up, WWE seems to send the message, "We want Super Cena to win, but we also don't fully take responsibility for it." And the worst part is that a few months later, he will do the same with the Great Khali, whom he will also be the first one to pin at One Night Stand in 2007. It's crazy to think that the Great Khali started a few days after Umaga in April 2006, and that the two monsters had their aura shattered by Cena in 2007. In the end, Vince McMahon was faithful to what he said in that meeting with the writers in April 2006. They did create monsters, and they gave them both to Cena. So even if this booking decision made me sick, I must admit that the last man standing match that Umaga and Mr. Hustle Loyalty Respect had at the Royal Rumble a few weeks later was a masterpiece. First, I would like to say that Cena was serious and acted like an adult. It is the version of him that I prefer, with sober colors. Umaga, on the other hand, was loyal to his wild side that I think is great since his beginnings. He sticks out his tongue, he screams, he also has the gold teeth. It should also be noted that in his Titantron we can see some kind of mask with red eyes, which can make us think of the mask in the video game Crash Bandicoot. When I look at Umaga, I really see an animal. And this face-to-face that the two men had at the beginning was great, I think. There was chemistry, and an incredible contrast between the superhero on the one hand and the monster on the other. Umaga's in-ring style was powerful and rich, between the Samoan Spike, the Samoan Wrecking Ball, the Samoan Drop, the Splash, and some kind of bear hug. It was a violent match, like the moment when Cena threw the stairs of the ring at his opponent. Umaga's splash on the table that Cena avoids. The blood, of course, the huge punch too. At one point, Cena even makes a comeback in a Hulk Hogan style. And it really reminds of old school wrestling in a good way, namely a heroic babyface who must defeat the big bad monster. And at least Umaga will have managed to make Cena look as an ultimate fighter in this match. I find the finish incredibly original too. Cena will do his STF submission, but he will also use the ring rope to strangle Umaga, which creates a mind-blowing visual with a bleeding Cena who puts everything into this battle to win. This will lead to the Samoan passing out and a count of 10, and therefore a new victory for the leader of the C Nation. About this finish, Mike Chioda, the referee of the match, says, "Umaga couldn't answer anything. He was out like a light. That's why I got so worried about Eki. I was thinking, was he concussed? But no, the rope got him and choked him out, and he passed out." Backstage after the match, Umaga told Chioda that he was trying to tell him that he was suffocating, but that he couldn't do it because Cena was squeezing him too hard. Chioda told him, "I just thought you were selling so good." But the Samoan told him, "Oh, Us, I was trying to tell you, but I couldn't get it out." Anyway, this true masterpiece between the two men is also for Zilla Fatu, his father's favorite match. The question we can ask ourselves after that is, can Umaga recover from these two losses against Cena? Is his credibility intact? According to Jim Ross, it doesn't kill a character to lose. He kept his momentum in his eyes, but in my humble opinion, it should have been a longer rivalry with Cena, with at least one big pay-per-view victory for Umaga. When he was asked about his favorite moment in his career, Armando Estrada said, "Just the whole undefeated streak and the booking of Umaga from the get-go as an unstoppable monster, running through all the baby faces, including Triple H, including Shawn Michaels, including Kane, eventually getting to John Cena, and John Cena being the first guy to slay the dragon." The next big moment for the Samoan Bulldozer, and what will be the greatest time of his career in my opinion, will take place at WrestleMania 23 in 2007. That year, the WWE set up a battle of the billionaires between Donald Trump and Vince McMahon. They will have to choose a representative, and the loser will be forced to have his head shaved. And it's Umaga that Vince is going to choose to represent him, which is quite remarkable for the Samoan, in addition to being a match that will get a lot of media attention. However, it almost didn't happen for the Samoan. As Armando Estrada says, "It was a SmackDown ECW tour and Mexico tour shortly before the Battle of the Billionaires in 2007. And Umaga used to do this thing on his entrance where he would walk around the ring on house shows and he would just snarl and look mean at the fans. And sometimes he would grab a chair and he would act as if he was going to smash the fan in the head with the chair. And I would come up from behind and grab the chair to stop him from assaulting the fan and getting fired and going to jail." Well, one day in Mexico, we're doing this little act, this pre-match act, and Umaga goes to swing the chair and the chair slips and he hits the fan in the front row in the head. And instantly we're like, "Oh my god, we're fired! We're fired! We're not going to WrestleMania! We're not going home! We're not collecting!" And Umaga and I kind of look at each other like, "What are we going to do, man? We effed up!" And I look at the fan and he jumps up and he's like, "Yeah!" And I was like, "Are you okay, amigo?" I tell Jimmy Tillis, whoever was security at the time, and I'm like, "Bring him some merchandise. Just make sure they're alright. No lawsuits." So that was a close call. Fortunately, this story ended well. In this road to WrestleMania 23, Umaga will even win his first WWE title, the Intercontinental title, on February 19th against Jeff Hardy, which gives him even more credibility at that time. Donald Trump will choose Bobby Lashley, the ECW champion, as his representative, and it will lead to a match at WrestleMania, which, even if it wasn't the final one, clearly was the main attraction. Moreover, you should know that this show is the second best-selling pay-per-view in the history of the company, just behind WrestleMania 28, and that until 2012, it was the number one. Do you realize how crazy it is for Umaga to be in this match for his first WrestleMania? In addition, apparently, he was not supposed to be the one to represent Vince at first, since the veteran Hardcore Holly tells in his book that he was the one who was originally planned to be. As we might have expected, Umaga will lose, even if it's not in a clean way, since he got a stunner from the VIP referee for this battle, Stone Cold Steve Austin. This is also the second pinfall he has suffered since April 2006. The fact of the matter is that, in my opinion, for Umaga, it was already a real accomplishment to be there, with maximum exposure. And no one will take away from him that he was one of the major players in the main attraction of one of the most watched shows in WWE history. In the following months, we can note that he lost his Intercontinental title on the Monday Night Raw of April 16 in Milan, Italy, against the one who made his debut on that day, Santino Marella, even if it was because of an interference of Bobby Lashley. But Umaga will reclaim his title in July. On May 7th, Umaga even beat the Highlanders team all by himself. And the way he did is incredible, because after stacking them in the middle of the ring, he is going to do a double pin on his two opponents at the same time. Which can let us think of what his cousin Roman Reigns did in the main event of WrestleMania 37. Everything will really change in August 2007. The Sports Illustrated magazine is going to reveal a list of wrestlers who are clients of a pharmacy in Orlando that sells steroids without asking for a prescription. And unfortunately, Umaga is one of them. He received somatropin between July and December 2006, a growth hormone. In this list, there was also Wendy Orton and Edge, among others. Even if, according to Jim Ross, many guys were cheating at that time, WWE could not afford the slightest scandal, especially since there was the Chris Benoit case in 2007. So, without any hesitation, the Federation will suspend Umaga for 30 days. Let's not forget either that he had already been fired in 2003 by the company, and that this new contract was a second chance for him, that no mistakes were going to be allowed. Just before suspending him, the company will make him lose his Intercontinental title on September 3rd against Jeff Hardy. And, as a symbol, it is the first 100% clean defeat without a roll-up or an interference of the Umaga character. This event symbolizes the beginning of a complicated time for the Samoan, since he will go through a lot of painful moments in the next 2 years. And, unfortunately, as you will see very soon, they will lead to a tragical end. In the next episode, we will dive together into the difficult situations that he had to go through in 2008 and 2009, which will end for good his career with the WWE. You will learn even more about the human being that he was, in particular through his friendship with Jeff Hardy, and discover how his loved ones and even Vince McMahon experienced the tragedy that happened on December 4th, 2009. We were able to see how dominant Umaga was for a long time after becoming the Samoan Bulldozer. How awesome his monster heel run was, with his match against John Cena at the 2007 Royal Rumble and his participation in the Battle of the Billionaires being two absolute highlights. After reliving his golden age in the company, I have a debate for you. Do you think Umaga would have deserved to be WWE champion at some point? We invite you to come and give your opinion. It will be interesting to talk about it together in the comments and to share our points of view. We can say that this topic raises a lot of questions. I hope you had a good time watching this video, and I invite you to stay in the paradise of wrestling to look at some other ones. See you right away.
And that's the bottom line, 'cause Stone Cold said so. What?